If you've been following me, watching my videos, listening to my podcast, you know that I've had some crazy biblical references over the past few years. Remember my 1421 video? Wow. Well, recently, I've been introduced to the Kabbalah in the 72 names of God. These came in a divine light, in a divine fashion. And I want to dive a little bit more deeply into their significance, especially how it relates to the ascension process. Well, who better to start a discussion with than my dear friend Sandra Tiffany, who is a student at the Kabbalah Center. In this video, we're going to talk about the Bible, biblical references, how they relate to what's happening now in our reality, the 72 names of God and their amazing power and significance, as well as abundance, lack, and manifestation. I hope you enjoy it.
When I first started my Kabbalah journey, well, I've been studying human design for the last year and a half. And Kabbalah is actually a portion of the chart. Now, I can't tell you exactly how it is because I haven't made that connection. I know how the Chinese I Ching is, I know how the chakra system and astrology, but the energy of Kabbalah is just so magical. And so I started on level 1 is what the Kabbalah Center offers. And I started applying some of the tools that they give you really to center yourself and to pause. And so I've kind of been working on those tools. And I'm actually on the 9th week, went back to Kabbalah 1 again, because I'm okay, now that I have this different understanding, here is another layer, because I was feeling kind of reactive to what's going on in the collective, which I haven't really been for such a long time. And so
it's you see it from a higher perspective when you return to things like that, right? You study it and then it's okay, you get something out of it, and then you'll go back to it later when you have growth, you've grown
for sure,
and more comes out of it. And with me, this is just craziness because I work in such a unique way. I awakened to my favorite band is Genesis. Okay. Genesis, right? And I awakened to Turn It On Again, one of their songs. I was literally sitting out back by my pool one day and popped out of my body. Okay. So Genesis started the whole thing with me. Right. And I'm moving, and in 2020, I'm laying on my couch in my family room at night, and I'm drifting off to sleep, kind of like in that maybe theta brainwave state. You're in between wakefulness and sleep. Very clear 1421, 1421 appears. Okay. So I wake up and I'm what the heck is that? The next day, my Pleiadian guide comes forward and starts giving me these breadcrumbs. She's go research this. So I start researching stuff on Google, and it leads me to Exodus. Okay. So I awaken to Genesis. I'm moving into Exodus with 1421. And I'm not a Bible study. I mean, I grew up in a Jewish family household. I never studied the Bible. I mean, Hebrew, went to Hebrew school for a few years and I got kicked out because I didn't want to keep going, right? I just was never religious.
Right.
And I move into this, and here comes 1421. So it's the story of Moses and leading the Israelites right out of Egypt, away from the Pharaoh's tyranny. So I'm seeing this as what's happening in the collective right now. Okay. This is back in 2020. So I'm seeing this with COVID and everything, right? And I'm okay, we're moving through Exodus. So these biblical references start coming forward. And then 3 or 4 months ago, the 72 names of God drops in. Okay. I'm sitting again, flipping through TV, probably watching Seinfeld H Daily and something like that, whatever, just relaxing. And I turn on this channel on DirecTV, and it's a Jewish channel, and something led me to it. I don't know why. It's down in the lower numbers. I never am on those channels. I turn it on, and this Kabbalah expert who teaches Kabbalah is talking about the 72 names of God. And he talks about Moses in Exodus in 1421. And I'm mine goes like this, right?
Yeah.
So I get the book. I'm reading this book, and it talks about, as you know, the symbols, the Hebrew writing are activations, right? They're activations. So we look at that, and it activates DNA, and it goes back to Moses. And, a lot of times it's taught that God parted the Red Sea, but what really happened was Moses invoked the power of God through these 72 names. and brought that energy through and was able to part the Red Sea. It's all metaphorical, of course, but got me thinking. So I bought the book. I'm studying the book. I'm reading the names. Very much like when I awakened, I was moving up through 4D. I was receiving geometric patterns. Okay, I was close my eyes. I'd see geometric patterns all the time. And these are DNA activations. So this book comes along and I'm studying this now, all these synchronicities. And sure enough, I'm realizing that these symbols are activations. They're activating codes within us. They're lighting up our DNA. Have you guys talked about that at all?
Well, so on my little card here, because I scan it every morning and I try to at night, and I have it in my car. So if I'm sitting in carpool, I'm like always scanning it. But here's what it says on here is the 72 names of God is a state-of-the-art technology encoded and concealed in the biblical story of Exodus. It is a divine sequence of visual meditations that act as spiritual conduits for every aspect of energy you need in order to achieve the love, health, friendship, and money you desire, and much more. And so kind of how I really got started also in the 72 names, my Kabbalah teacher, her name is Batya, love her to pieces. I was kind of going through some personal struggles. And she's like, okay, I challenge you to 90 days. You scan the 72 names of God and you expect a miracle to come from it. And honestly, in that time, I think that was February, maybe end of January. And I've had so many mental breakthroughs, but to also share to Moses is apparently the first conspiracy theorist, and he raised the consciousness that separated the sea. It was your belief,
right. Yes. So he grounded this energy, this high frequency energy, this is our divine source energy. So the 72 names reconnects us with the divine source energy. Now, it was interesting this morning. It just hit me. Maybe I'm a little dense. I don't know. I don't know if you made this connection. They talked about it, but when you double 72, what do you get? You get 144.
And then 140. No, I haven't made that.
Okay. So the 144,000 golden strands of DNA, which is the divine blueprint, the divine awakening code, right? So,
oh my God,
isn't that crazy?
Sorry,
so that just dropped in this morning. Okay. So we can look at this as the other half. We have our humanity, and now we're getting our divine blueprint through the 72 names, the other half. And we incorporate this energy. And you don't even need to know what these 72 names really mean. It's just looking at the visual, it activates these codes, and each name represents a different, health, hope, manifesting, abundance, whatever it may be. There's 72 of them, right?
Yeah.
And just incredible. So that came this morning, and I've got, my galactic guides, my Pleiadian guides, they're all around me this morning, my spirit guide, and this stuff's starting to come through, and it's just blowing my mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to you. And I know you're really into this. I think it's just crazy.
And that's even just reading the Bible. I had a session with my teacher yesterday, and I'm like, I just can't believe everything that I've learned in this book. And she did remind me, she's like, this is an instruction manual per se. It's all codes, all metaphors. And I'm so much you. I did go to a little bit of church as a child. My parents weren't very strict religious people.
That's how mine were.
Very religious town, city that I grew up in. And in fact, really where I'm from, a majority of my friends don't believe in God. And and then as I kind of have come through my awakening journey, I've always believed in God. I think I've shared with you, my dad's schizophrenic, and I had a very chaotic upbringing. And so long story short, I have lived on my own since I was 16. And there was a time that I was actually staying in my cousin's car, and it was one of the coldest winters on record in my hometown. And I can't tell you that it was I had this spiritual moment that I don't remember it as clear as that, but I just, within my body, I should have died, really and truly. I should have had hypothermia. I had a winter jacket on and a sleeping bag. And as you know, winter is
oh yeah, brutal.
And I was just this young, I think I was 17 at the time. So long story short, from that moment, I always believed that I was here for more, but I didn't know what that meant or what that was, or what is that? And then as I was kind of going through my awakening, and honestly, to speak to 2020, so just before 2018, 2019, I started getting Reiki, and I was starting to have these aha moments and things
Mm-hmm.
coming through. But in 2020, I started studying Reiki, like to like actually be able to perform it. Although
I did too in
did you?
2020. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the synchronicities just like
Oh, totally.
like within the
Yeah.
community and like with life, you know, like it's like once you open up your eyes, you like it's all there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I had the second attunement, like level 2 attunement, something busted open within me, and I just like it actually brought me back to that moment in my cousin's car of like, yeah, now I get it. There's like way more. And it is like from that time, you know, like I have been like on this healing journey and just understanding energy and like that, like, a lot of the conversations that I have with friends who aren't quite on this same path, you know, like they don't really understand what energy is. They don't really understand. And I understand that because it took time for me to learn it.
Right.
So that's what I told my teacher yesterday. I'm like, you know, even down to like the primary basics of like, we know the measurement of energy in a bowl of ice cream is say 350 calories. But do we realize like how much guilt and shame costs us, or like what's like kind of like weighing us down at times? So anyways, I'm on this whole tangent about energy, but like, yes. And it's like so wild. And that's like the 72 names, like how it's a technology that unlocks within you,
Yes.
you know, all of these incredible, magnificent, well, this essence that like you can't even put to words, but like even yourself not studying this, like, which is also interesting because like Kabbalah is not of the Jewish faith, but like my one girlfriend who introduced me to Kabbalah, she is Jewish. And I asked her, now that I've been studying Kabbalah, I'm like, hey, like, has it like really helped you with, and like, is this like what you learn growing up as a Jewish person? And she was like, actually, to be honest, it's given me a completely different perspective, the spiritual aspect of it. And so all of the holidays, like, well, recently with oh my gosh, and I'm like horrible.
That was Passover with Passover. Yeah,
is such a huge portal of energy that we can like maximize off of, and that's like goes in line with like parting the sea, like all of these things. And like a girlfriend and I were having a conversation specifically about religion and how it's like every religion kind of has like its little bits, but it's only like they let you have so much. And then there's like the power of Kabbalah, and that's like I tell my friends, like especially my friends that are currently going through stuff, I'm like, honestly, just take level 1 of Kabbalah. It will help open you up. I can't explain it to you, but it's, and the first thing they all say, I don't like religion. And I'm like,
well, you know, it's technology. They call it Kabbalah, the 72 names, the technology of the soul. Okay. Right. And this is something I think that's been hidden away. And in fact, it just came to light recently. The 72 names have been rediscovered and re-brought forward. Because it is so powerful. And again, when we tie it into spirituality and the awakening codes and awakening our DNA and everything that we know and everything that we trust and feel, it just resonates with that, right? It just resonates. You could feel it deeply.
It's so deep. And sorry, I'm like kind of looking at some of my notes because there's some of the things.
No, that's okay.
With you, but it really does. And actually, I was having a conversation with a lady I met through YouTube, and we were talking, and she said something to me a couple of days ago that I've like really been reflecting on. And she said, everything is already written on our heart. And when we're like learning, it really is just activating what we already know within us, and which is so true. And I think that that's why it does, like it elevates you. And then like I can't quote it right off the top of my head truly, because I've been just like really, like I was telling my teacher yesterday, I feel like I'm in a state of like just learning, like deep dive learning, going back. Like I had a dream the one day that was like, go back to the beginning, go back to Genesis. And so that's where I am. As I'm kind of like, you know, like obviously I see what's going on in the collective. I don't know if you follow S.A. Smith, the girl in the universe. Okay. Well, she's like talking a lot about like the grand solar flash. And so I've like, on my radar, I'm like, I'm all over the place, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I want to understand like what is there for us. And obviously it like stems like so many questions, but there was a part I wanted to read you from this Bible. So this is the Kabbalistic Bible of Genesis. And
Okay.
so the format of the Kabbalistic Bible is like, they have like the Bible verses, then they have the Hebrew, because you can still scan it and also like activate the technology, which can like do some good clearing for the world and
Sure.
itself. And so then at the bottom of the page, which I'll show you, excuse all my highlighting, at the bottom of the pages, is the Kabbalistic interpretation, like going back to like, thousands of years ago, like that was like their interpretations and their teachings that they've passed along the way. Well, 72 names, I wrote instrument, mind over matter. The sages tell us that Abraham, so prior to like Abraham coming into enlightenment, I just learned his name was originally Abram, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Okay.
Bear with me here. But the sages tell us that Abram employed the instrument of the 72 names of God, which granted him the power of mind over matter to achieve this miracle of protection. Through the name Abraham, and also with the quality of light contained within the text of this section, we can tune ourselves into the 72 names of God and attain a state of mind over matter. Thus, when the going gets tough in our personal lives, we find ourselves tossed into the fire of challenging events. We can triumph over the physical world of chaos. Everything begins, however, with a total trust and certainty in the light of the Creator, as well as a desire to resist one's habitual reactive tendencies. And so I'm kind of skipping here, but through that understanding of this section of Genesis, everyone can attain the power of mind over matter, and with it, absolute control of the physical world. This isn't where I was trying to go, but as you can like see, like the instrument is so strong, and what it opens up and like what it heals and clears, and especially too like that understanding of mind over matter,
it ties back into everything that we learn and experience on this path, right? So here's an ancient explanation of something that we're currently experiencing now, or awakening to, that's been around forever. It's just kind of been tucked away and hidden from us for a long, long time, and it's returning.
Yes, definitely. Well, they call it like the time of Messiah, like heaven on earth.
Yeah. So when we take these biblical references and when we look at them from a higher perspective, we're going through the Bible right now. We're actually experiencing these events, but we're experiencing them from a higher frequency, right? So when we look at the biblical experience, that's more of a 3D type of thing, and you've got these elements of magic in there, but there's a lot of fear. When the stories are told, at least in the religious institutions, there's a lot of fear and things like that invoked, which is a lower frequency. When we start to read it from our perspective, we start to see the magic in it. We see the higher perspective. We see the higher frequency energy come through, and we can align with that. So we're really moving through some of these stories right now, but from a higher timeline, those who have the frequency to be able to see it, right?
For sure. Well, and to speak to like even earlier, like I said, going back to to Kabbalah 1 again, and having it from this different consciousness, what I see and like what I feel like my guides are showing me is it's like peeling an onion. It is like layers, and that's why we gain those layers. But I actually took a class yesterday, and one of the things I loved that it talked about, like with that like idea of the Messiah, like for so many religions, it's a physical person coming to save us. When it's not, it's a consciousness. It's an consciousness. And that's where like I feel too from 2020, my whole life, like as I shared with you, like my upbringing was very chaotic, but I always got like really upset when people would make me feel like I should feel like a victim. And so even in these times, I still like, I'm like, stop, like pull it together. Like you have control. Like it's you. Like
it's your mindset. Yeah. Your thoughts.
1000%. And so then like having and learning these tools and exactly what we're seeing out, like it like to speak to like that fear, that like what I observe and what I would say my interpretation is just when like a lot of fear, and like I feel like what was the term I heard the other day? Basically like giving out the victim card to so many people, it does help keep their vibration low, and
that's right.
they can't see. And there's a story actually that I just read yesterday or a couple days ago in the Bible of Hagar, who was Abraham's, it was Sarah's maid that I guess she told Abraham to impregnate. So she had a son with Abraham, and his name is Ishmael, I believe. But anyways, long story short, after Sarah has her baby, Isaac, she wants Isaac and Ishmael separated. So she tells Abraham to get Hagar out of here. And so when Hagar is out in the desert and can't find any like water, she walks away from her son because she doesn't want to see him like die, because obviously he's thirsty. So then, like, how I interpreted the story was then like God comes in and he's like, you know, you just don't see, basically, like there is water. And then the well appears. But what like the Kabbalistic interpretation like shared was that it raised her consciousness, because she's off. She's obviously, you know, at a low point, finally like connected to God and like to the higher realm and praying. Obviously she's sad for her son, and all of a sudden she can see. And it's like, I actually like love, like I was sharing with my sister the other day, it's like so interesting, you know, like all my life I've prayed, but like not in like a religious way, but I've always like asked and then you receive. And really it's so simple. We're just asking for more consciousness, because where we are in this moment right now, we just don't see. And so then when we ask for more expansion, we receive that, so we can either walk through it, solve it, whatever it is, heal it. And so yeah, like the times really are, but the powers that be and like these structures, you know, such as religion, government, etc., it's easier for them to stay in power.
It's control structures.
Yeah. And you're like born with purpose and here to like give. Like it is your, like I've said so many times, especially within to my husband and whatever, I can't subscribe to the fact that we would leave the higher realms and come here to live in constant torture and depression and feeling like we're never enough, because it is like, you talk to most people, and I experience it too. I've been doing a lot of healing on like Black stuff, even though I have a very abundant life, it still comes up sometimes that it's like, oh my God, are we going to have enough to be able to travel? Or like, you know, even now, like if you look out in the collective, people like not enough baby food or formula. Or, you know, like we're seeing that lack really show up for us. But it is like, why is that showing up for us? Like getting curious with that to expand our consciousness to
it's a doorway. These are doorways. First of all, it shows us when we experience these emotions, the lack, we're separating from our higher self. We're disconnecting from our higher self, and we're living through the five senses. And when we identify with the five senses, we lower our frequency and we start to close off. We do this. But when we can see it for what it is and realize that this is just a manifestation of something within us that is coming forward to give us an opportunity to realign in this denser energy, that's the magic behind it. So everything's an opportunity for growth, to ground more consciousness. That's what's happening. That's what this reality is all about. But there are powers that be and energies in this world. When we're trying to, you know, rise in frequency, the density is going to come up to be felt. And there are people that will align with that to try to keep the collective under this feeling of control. And that's just all part of the process. There is no good. There is no bad. There's no, you know, evil and good. It's all here for us, and it's here for our growth, and it's here for opportunity. And in order for people to be able to open up to who they truly are, their divinity, their divine selves, their higher selves, they need to be able to experience that which was blocking them from that process, right? So a lot of that's coming up now to be felt, to be experienced, to be seen. And when you could take a step back and observe this and not align with it and know it's for your greater good, it's a growth opportunity. That right there brings down a rush of energy, information, higher frequency flow. And if we could ground that, keep that space, and again, observe everything and not identify with it, we can anchor that in and embody it. The more of us that do that, we start to connect up quantumly with others, and it starts lighting others up, because then we're the space holders for others to be able to do that too. And that's what's happening. But in order to go down that road, you have to be able to walk through the forest, through the darkness, and experience it, because that's the path. A lot of people want to run from that, or bypass that, spiritual bypassing. It's just always be, everything's good, everything's great. We'll ignore the stuff that hurts. You can't. You got to dive into the stuff that hurts. You got to feel it fully and alchemize it. And that's what's going on. And when we do that, we could start to connect to these stories that are represented in the Bible, the biblical stuff, things like that, the miracles. Those start to become available. We start to perceive them from a different perspective. And once we start doing that, consciousness again expands, and it starts to actually manifest. So we start to see little miracles happening around us that we're creating. We're creating this.
Well, and that's like kind of like what I like. It's hard for me to articulate, because it's like I have this vision, and there's a couple of points that I want to talk like that you had touched on that like was like yes, but I literally like view us. Obviously, I see us as physical, but I literally view us as like almost like, if you can picture when you see like a fairy in a Disney movie, and they're just like a color. And so I just see us as these like balls of energy. And that's exactly it. And to like speak to what you said about like the distractions, us running away, I feel like we've been kind of programmed to like turn to your phone, like who's on Instagram, what can you see? Right. Oh, look, that person has like, I'll use Kardashians obviously are a great example. Oh my God, like look at their house. It looks like it's done up by Nordstrom or Neiman's. And like, I don't have that. I'm not enough. I could never have that. So every single time, that's like lowering.
It separates us. Yeah.
Yeah. Which also in Kabbalah, like one of the terms is they call, like that negative voice in your head, your opponent, they also call it the Satan. And so the whole, like my understanding and interpretation of what I've learned is the Satan really is, at the beginning, we had everything was good. Everything was perfect, but we didn't appreciate it. We didn't earn it. And so that's where like the opponent was created. The opponent is created by the creator. So like, also, so we can kind of do our work to earn it. Now, obviously, we're at a very extreme. I'm actually reading this book called Satan, and it says at the beginning, like, I've done my job almost too well now, because look at the chaos that's in the world right now. But every single time that we like feel separated from our divine like beingness is almost like a gap for the opponent to get in there, to get in your mind, to like make you feel like, yeah, you should feel that way. How would you ever afford that lifestyle? Or, that then is just like making you further and further away from.
If we identify with that, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's easy for that voice to get in there, even like having all of the amazing tools, at times it's there. And I will say, I'm very thankful. I can be like, whoa, back up, Buster. Like
you can see it, the programming. Yeah.
Yes. Thank goodness. But, and that's like some of the stuff that I've learned from even just being in people's human design charts and just seeing like the energy that they have. And like, it's all like super wild and amazing and cool. But yeah, like it really is like, I'll give you one other analogy that like I was shown one night. My husband, he left a glass of sparkling water on the island. And I said to him, I was like, is this your water from last night? And he was like, yeah, why? And I was like, well, it's so interesting. It's been out. It's obviously had oxygen. So usually the carbonation you would think would all have come to the surface and be gone. But like, there's still bubbles at the bottom of the glass. Like how? And so anyways, then I go for my walk and like what I'm seeing is this glass. It's exactly that. I saw it like these bubbles that are within our frequency that, yeah, like we can do a lot of healing and clearing and stuff, which is amazing. It's raising our consciousness. But every once in a while, one of those bubbles comes to the surface because
that's right.
You thought it oxygenated all of the carbonation. Yes. But here it is. And that's like a part of our process. And, actually as I said, I'm back in Kabbalah 1 again, and I love it. My teacher said just on Tuesday night, he was like, when you have a confusion, overwhelm, like something that is like pulling you out of alignment, that is my favorite, because I know in that moment, I'm going to be closer to the creator and have the opportunity to
It's an
bring it
opportunity.
and not give in to the opponent, to the Satan that's like
right.
waiting there, who, you know, is for you to ascend. And
it's the higher frequency light. It's these downloads. It's the energy coming in, the solar activity, if you want to look at it externally, moving through us. And in order for that energy to move through us, it's got to show us everything that's in the way. We've got dense pockets, like bubbles of blockage of dense energy stuck within our physical body. So that high frequency light hits that energy, that dense energy, and it starts to vibrate it up. And then that's where our consciousness comes to play, because now our consciousness could come to the table, and with awareness, we can make a choice. Do we want to align with the density, with the feelings of lack, the fear, anxiety, whatever it may be, or do we want to experience it finally? Because these dense pockets of energy within our body, it's there because we've failed to acknowledge it in the past, right? Something traumatic happened, we kind of tucked it away, brought it down here, it's stuck, and our light is trying to come through us. And in order to do that, it's got to shine its light on these dark patches, dark bubbles, we'll call them bubbles, and it reflects it out into our reality to be experienced. If we could recognize that in that moment, we could definitely create that space and detach from it and just feel it without judgment, right? The mind wants to judge it. The mind wants to align with the memory of what created it. The mind wants to upset us, make us angry with the person. Maybe there was a person involved with that particular trauma, you know, and go off that way. But if we could just see it and feel it for what it is, we start to raise its frequency, and more of our divine flow, our divine energy comes down, grounds, and starts moving back up, comes down into this beautiful toric field. And as that high frequency light comes out into our toric field, that's our reflection, that's our universe, that's our world. It starts to change, and it starts to look like a higher frequency version of Earth, right? Yeah. So when we could clear and feel these things within us and raise their frequency, we are literally, just by doing that, we are manifesting new Earth. We're bringing that forward into our reality. The more and more people do that, it's literally going to change. And that's what's happening right now. It is changing. It's all that gunk that's stuck is coming out to be experienced all at once.
Yes. Well, and like, so to actually share with you like exactly how you expressed like the process. So in the very first class of Kabbalah 1, like that is like one of the goals that you learn is to pause. And when you pause, when something's coming up to you, you have two choices. You can be reactive or you can be proactive. And that like, that alone, when I first learned it, was like, holy cow, it still catches me up sometimes. But sure. Are you going to be reactive and pull yourself out of alignment, pull yourself further from the light? But to like speak like those bubbles, those dark bubbles, those wounds. Like the other day I was actually talking on Instagram story, and it like was so clear to me. I could see like the wounds, like we're looking on the outside for people to like band-aid our wounds. Right. But really what they're showing up in our movie, they're showing up to like push on that wound to that's like help us let it go and move on. And that's like I say to like many of my friends, I'm like, I just wish we could normalize just being authentic to what's coming up. Like, listen, you are triggering me and I thank you for it. I just need to process this and like normalizing that, and so that we can alchemize, because it's like so much pain and like, I'm right, you're wrong, like you're bad, I'm good, you know, like there's no such thing. It's like that, like I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I'm constantly telling them like, neither of you are right and neither of you are wrong. Right. It just is. Yeah. It is. You just are. Well, and you both just see it from a different aspect, because you both have, even though they're from the same parents, same environment, you see it differently, you experience it differently. And so that is like my goal of like, you know, for humanity, is just like knowing like that you are perfect, you are whole. Do you have some stuff? Definitely. Like, could it be from past life, childhood? Yeah, sure. Definitely. Like, especially like when you start to go back in history and you understand, like, even, you know, like reading the story of Noah, and like, you know, imagine being one of those souls that like, I know it's code and stuff, but just giving it as a reference, imagine being one of those souls that gets flooded. Like imagine the
Mm-hmm.
trauma on your body. Like doesn't matter if you were evil or good or whatever, like that's a lot of trauma. And so that
Mm-hmm.
would like carry on. And I just recently did a healing through the Kabbalah Center, and it's called Tikkun. So your Tikkun is basically your life correction, like what you're here to like overcome. Can be like self-limiting beliefs, or like mine was like lack, like generational, like a lot of women in my family have all depended on men, like and back in like
Okay.
generations. And so like it's been coming up like within my own marriage and with me. And I started offering human design sessions and
Yes.
them, but a whole lot came up from it. Like, like it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy, obviously, to say like, here's my rate. And then you actually start taking on clients. And for me, I was like, oh my God, like I have to deliver them. I would prepare for like 4 hours before having a session with them because I want it to be absolutely perfect, which
Yeah.
then was like, ooh, this feels so icky. Like, I don't even want to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And then to get in front of them, and like actually one of the first like paying clients I had, she didn't speak a word the entire session. So I was like, everything's coming up at me. Like, it's like, you're not good enough. She's not receiving much.
Yeah. Worth and your value. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then like now again, like once you start to like, shave off some of the bubbles, you kind of get to more of the root of like, okay, I'm going to get curious. Like, here we go. What is it? And so, I'm still digging at it and I'm getting there, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is like calling myself out on like, what is it that you're afraid of? What is it like that is your biggest fear? And then
Mm-hmm.
like, digging into it and like and I love to um like I've been very fortunate to have access to lots of different healers in this journey and understanding like everything from theta to Reiki to human design
Mm-hmm.
to, like even just straight up psychics, like they all serve a different
Oh yeah.
purpose and like has really helped. But yeah, like really getting down to those root things is also like normalizing that. Like, and I was kind of ashamed at first, like, like really and truly like being completely transparent when I first was dating my husband. And I understand why a lot of the people in my environment thought that, oh, she's a gold digger. I've never dated anybody for money in my life, is what my thought process was. But here I was, this little girl from this little town in Canada, and I'm dating this man who's wealthy from Houston, Texas. I can understand he's like buying me designer things. I didn't even know what Fendi was. Like, I thought like American Eagle was the bee's knees, So it's such an interesting process. But then that's coming up at the same time as I'm dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's right. Like my mom lived off a man, her mom lived off a man, well, a couple of men.
Mm-hmm.
You get deeper, it's like, okay, I understand that aspect, but then, okay, past life, what happened there? So just allowing it to come to the surface and normalizing that so that we can get there. But that's where I feel like the more, and I understand, like, especially too, to bring in the factor of past life. Like I have friends that are like, the government is amazing and they're going to save us. And I used to judge it. I was like, wake up, but now I understand, like, who knows what they experienced in the
Yeah.
past, like it could have been that they were a part of a plague, and like, who knows the outcome or what
Mm-hmm.
happened, the specifics. So I try to like zoom out every time, especially when I get triggered by them, to like understand that there's more to it. But if we don't normalize the conversations, that you're being distracted from who you
Mm-hmm.
are. And that's like, I love Kabbalah 1, class 1. The teacher says, like, you were born perfect. Like, you are perfect and
Mm-hmm.
you're whole. And like, don't, like, whenever you think that you're not, whoa, you need to pause, because if you don't, you're being very reactive. And what
That's right.
chaos are you creating from that reaction? And like, okay, you might not feel like you have the answers, but like, let's be proactive about it. Let's get curious. Let's,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, that's my TED talk on,
Well, when
on
we're
that.
reactive, when we're reactive like that, what we do is we keep giving energy to those emotions, and they keep coming up louder and louder and louder until we finally hit that pause button and step away from it. Again, everything's an opportunity to separate, to detach, and heal. Like the ancestral stuff, it's stored, it's locked away. We come in here with all of our ancestors. So all our whole lineage is with us. It's within us. They're all living within us. And they're coming forward. They're stepping forward so that we could heal those traumas that they experienced. So some of this comes up in our mind. We'll write a story of maybe something that happened to us when we were kids, but there's an energy behind it that maybe happened in a past life to an ancestor, right? Another version of us. And they're coming in here and they're stepping forward and they're saying, okay, this is the lifetime where the consciousness is going to come forward and hit that pause button. So we're giving them an opportunity to actually step forward, and we're alchemizing that energy for them and healing them. And that's the process of integration. We're bringing these fragments of us back in to the whole. We're doing that. The one thing I wanted to mention too, because a lot of people have asked me, how do we do this? We'll get triggered, we'll identify, and we say, oh, don't identify. Create that space right away and see it with awareness. How do we do that? And for me, it's that pause button is consciousness. We bring consciousness to the moment. And in order to do that, if we could train ourselves, build new patterns, new neural pathways to go to the breath, to go to the body, that will hit that pause button just like that. Okay, so breathe. That's just one tip I want to throw out there for everybody. Breathe, stop, take a deep breath, bring your awareness to your breath. That will detach you instantly from that thought. And once that happens, energy comes up now and starts to fill that space. High frequency energy starts to fill that space, and your perspective will literally rise in that very moment if you could do that.
For sure. Well, and I love your tips that you've been giving on the breath. And like, I think
on Instagram and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if it was your tip 1 or tip 2, where you're pulling your higher self.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure into like your heart.
I think it was tip 2. Yeah.
I think it was tip 2 also. And I was actually on a walk as I was listening to it, and I was just like visualizing it was coming down, and it just, it really brings so much peace. And I think too, when you're no longer up here and you're in here, whatever is happening in front of you is, you're not looking at it trying to figure it out yourself. You're in your heart. And when you're in
exactly
that heart,
you're allowing it to be.
You're allowing it to be. And I think that one thing, like observation, because of people asking me the same question is, oh, I don't want to identify with like lack or like, I'm not enough. Because of, I don't want to manifest that because I'm speaking that, but it's not. And that's like,
right.
It's a good tool in some cases, but I think like, okay, hello, lack, let's like have a seat. Like, let's talk about this. Like, what is it that you're bringing up in me? What wants to be seen? But you can't do that from up here. You have to do it.
Well, like with lack, we're seeing abundance. That's what's bringing up the feeling of lack. So we're in a polarizing universe, right? So whatever the programming or blockage is within us, the reality is going to reflect back to us that blockage so that it can be healed. So we see abundance. It brings up a feeling of lack, and the feeling of lack that's coming up is our higher self showing us this feeling's in the way, because what you're seeing, the abundance, you are that. It's a reflection. The mind says lack. The soul says you're abundant. So we need to heal that, right? So if we could breathe it in and we could see it and recognize that opportunity that I am that. We start to, we raise the frequency of the lack, and it starts to turn into abundance, right? They start to come together, and that's who we truly are. So it's the mind that will always see it. It'll identify it with the density, with the trauma, but the soul showing us abundance. So if you want to use like the Kardashians, right? It's like, wow, oh boy, I can't possibly, I'm never going to have that. We're seeing abundance, which is a reflection of who we truly are, but the mind is identifying with lack because there's a program there, right? We can't have this. It's the bubble. So we flip it and we're like, wow, we can have that because we are that. We cannot experience that which we are not, right? It's all a reflection. So if we could flip that perspective from lack, now we flip it to abundance. Okay. And we start to identify with abundance instead of identifying with lack. And as soon as we can do that, we can breathe with that energy. We start to build circuitries and pathways between the two hemispheres of the brain, which connects up our energy with this fine, awesome reality. And we start to manifest from a higher frequency, right? And that's what happens. So we flip it. We want to see it. We want to flip it because our soul is always showing us the amazing things, the amazement in the reflection. It's the mind that's going to look for the stuff that hurts.
Certainly. Well, and with that like bubble analogy, like I see it as like it's weighing you down. But when you address it and you will release the bubble, you now have space to bring
More
in
space.
that
Yes.
incredibleness, you know, like
It's a vacuum.
it really is. It's a vacuum. And
Brings it
actually,
in.
I don't know if you follow A Man from the Stars, Curtis. So he does breath work detox, and I did one day, and it was so incredible. Like for 2 days, I was like receiving. But one of the things I also received that I thought was like super cool, that's also like to speak to like what's playing in front of you, is that like all of our chakra systems, especially like now I kind of look at it like from a human design aspect with the chart of like I see like this the diamond and the triangles and squares. And so anyways, we'll just one triangle. But anyway, I saw it immediately as it's like a satellite and a receptor. And so it's like, you know, like you're constantly like taking in the energies, giving the energy.
That's right.
Sometimes it falls on deaf ears, which obviously, you know, just different consciousness. But that is exactly it. Like everything that is playing in our movie in front of us is for us.
That's right.
Release and to like make that space, you know. It's just like the simplicity of like your closet. If you got rid of 6 pairs of shoes and that space holds 10, well, you kept 4, you know, you have room for 6 more shoes.
There's space, right?
You know,
so what do you fill it with, right? When we can look at that space now in the closet and say, oh wow, I could get more shoes, or we could take a step back and be like, let's see what comes through. We have now an availability of a choice. And that's how we kind of change our path, right? Yeah. So
thank you. Yes.
That's how we do it.
Yes. Well, and I think it's too, I don't know why I'm going to the closet, but I remember when I first moved into this house with my husband and my closet was so big, I hardly had enough stuff to fill it. I had also just moved here from the US or from Canada and like still had my stuff at my Canada house. Anyways, I remember that feeling of like, oh, I've got to fill it. And I just filled it with stuff, not even necessarily that I needed.
That's right.
And I feel like that's also like a good metaphor of like looking at like, what are we filling our life with? Like, who are we surrounding ourselves? And I find like also like, not just to speak to the news, but like the TV programs that we're watching, the music that we're listening to, what are we downloading into our field? Is it elevating us, or is it lowering our frequency, pushing us away? Like, oh, I could never be rich. I could never be, you know, and everything is relative.
Healthy.
Health of 1000%. Like,
I mean, look at all the drug commercials. Every other commercial, or it seems like 90% of the commercials are for some sort of drug, you know? So it's like, we're constantly being bombarded with, there's something wrong with you. You don't feel well, you know, and here's the solution. The external solution is going to come and help you. But yeah, that's the programming, right?
Certainly. No, it's all just, and especially when you get to kind of zoom out, when you finally like make some space from yourself. And that's where I always like refer back to like that like fairy bubble, you know, of energy. Like, are you down here or are you up here, getting to see the bird's eye view of what's happening? And, you know, like, and actually I think you and I have talked about Phil Good before, and lately his stuff has just been like on fire. And I love, he said like, you kind of in the journey, when you start to really release things, you kind of get to a point of like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not going to try to convince you of my way. Like before, when I was younger, I always felt like I had to convince everybody of like my beliefs, my things. And like now I'm like, you know, even when I've had like friends lately, especially with all the energy coming on the planet, to speak to what you were saying earlier, all this energy is just more light, and it's showing all of the wounds. It's showing all the dust in the corners that we haven't seen for quite some time. We're seeing more polarity, duality, but I'm just like, now I'm like, here's what's helped me. Here's Kabbalah. Here's some tools to get started, but we're seeing more, and it is what it is.
Well, I think we start to learn that, you know, we tend to want to, or I have in the past, I've kind of outgrown that, but you want to drop your frequency to match the person that is being argumentative, right? Because that's programming. We want to try to prove our perspective. And as we continue to grow, we pull away from that, and we realize that the best thing we could do for the collective, and my guides, the Galactics, my Palladian guide, expressed this to me is to embody our higher self and be that energy. You could have an effect on a person by not saying anything, but aligning and embodying your light, that will plant a seed with them. Because what happens is, if somebody's coming to you to be argumentative about something and they run into this energetic wall because they're at a frequency here and you're here, they feel that. They feel that. And when you don't engage with them, that has a profound effect on them subconsciously, because what's happening is they're now seeing in you their higher self. They're seeing it reflected to them through you. Okay. So think about that. So now that brings up anger within them. And what's happening? That process, we know that it's bringing up everything that's in the way that's preventing them from connecting with their higher self. Right. So we become their divine reflection. That's the best thing we could do in situations like that, is become their divine reflection, embody that in their presence, and show them who they really are. I'm not talking about ideologically or opinions politically, anything like that. You're embodying your higher self, which is reflecting to them their soul, their higher self. They're experiencing that energy within you, which does not feel so good from their perspective because they're in a lower frequency. It doesn't match, right? And that is their soul showing them, bringing up what's in there. Now, I've had this happen with people before, where they'll go away, and days later they'll come back and they'll be like, wow, something changed within them. Just by being true to who you are, you have a profound effect on them, instead of dropping and matching their frequency and being argumentative, combative, that kind of thing. And that's what we're here to do. That's how we have the biggest effect, the biggest impact on the collective, is to embody this energy.
Your perspective, like that you just shared with me, like I can't even tell you exactly like you said. I never thought of it from the perspective of, this is your higher self showing you what's available to you. You know, like I obviously saw like the density, clearing the density, like making space to be able to receive. Like, I don't believe that anything that we desire is a coincidence. I do believe obviously it's been placed there. It is a part of your plan. And, like I kind of, I as I shared earlier, like I didn't really know what even Fendi was, but I do like fine things. I do like nice things. I just don't identify with them anymore, that they have my power. But that
right. But that's okay.
No, for sure.
We could have everything.
Exactly.
You can have it all.
Well, that's where I was kind of going with it, is I feel like that's the other component that I feel like that's been like playing out in the collective, that you should feel guilty that you want fine things, or like whatever that is for you and whatever that means for you. Like, actually, I had a theta teacher who she was cute. Like, she constantly talked about wanting this Toyota RAV4. And I was like, like that's like amazing that is like what she desires. Like, my husband would love if I had that taste.
Yeah.
And I like said to my girlfriend that we were taking the course, that was taking the course with me, I'm like, is it bad that I really love the Lamborghini SUV? And she's like, she's so passionate about the Toyota RAV4. And I only share that because it's like, there's also this like collective message that we're supposed to be homogenized and all like want to like either, all be like the same, have the same car, the same house, the same everything. But like, we're all placed with like not only a unique purpose, but like our desires are all unique, because the crayon box needs one of every color, or you can't color your picture.
Well, Sandra, I used to have, we had 3 BMWs. I had 2 drivers in the house. I had my wife and myself. We had 3 BMWs. I had a Corvette in the garage as well. This was, 10 years ago, maybe. And I've driven BMWs for a long, long time, up until last year.
Really?
And I just always loved, they're awesome. Just love the way they perform, whatever. And I've recently changed. I think it's like that stuff's cool and it's fun and awesome, but I don't see it anymore as like a lack, because I sold my car back to the dealer last year. They were just giving crazy amounts of money for them. Oh yeah. And I'm driving my wife's other car. And I just sold it back, and yeah, I miss it. It was fun. It was an awesome car. I had an M240, performance twin turbo, just really cool, fun. But my wife used to drive an X5. I had a 3 Series convertible, and just we've had a whole bunch, like 12 of them over the last decade.
Amazing.
But now it's like it's funny because like this is what I desire. And if things come in my path that that bring those types of things forward, awesome. But like doing this and sharing this work and working with people like you and bringing this energy forward is just absolutely incredible. So again, we saw, all those years I had these vehicles and I saw abundance. I guess they were a reflection of abundance, right? And now I realize that it's all in here. So I was able to detach from them and let them go. And I've got another collector car, an 87 Buick Turbo in my garage right now that I'm toying with selling, which is a car since I was young I've always wanted. Mm-hmm. And for the life of me, recently I've had these thoughts like, should I sell it? And I'm like, I would never sell this car. I never wanted to sell it. But now it's like, I'm detaching from a lot of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And not to say I don't enjoy it, I don't like it, but it can move through me. And as I move this stuff out, same thing with all the garbage in the house, right? I bought a big house, got this big house, so much space. Well, it's full now with stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, do I need the stuff? Oh. No. So I want to kind of declutter all this, right? I'm like, how did I fill this house? When I bought it, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to fill this house. It's full. I think the more of that you have, the more you kind of support it. You fill it with stuff, right? Because a lot of that's you're placing your energy out into your field with things. Mm-hmm. Well, by decluttering and getting rid of my car last year and stuff like that, I've brought a lot of that energy back in here and realized that it's just available. And I could be available for this stuff to just flow through me and manifest in my field whenever. But I focus more on now this type of work because I just think it's incredible, And I want to bring that forward and let people know that, and it gets us out of that rat race mentality because it's a competitive type of thinking, isn't it? Well, I got to have this. I want to have that. I see this one's got that. I see that one's got that. So that's programming within us. And we're in a situation now where it's an opportunity to clear that. And once we could let it go, we realize that those things don't define us. We're defined by our abundance of who we are. When we could actually let that stuff go, we are saying to the universe, I've got everything I need. I don't need to place my energy in an external thing. And something amazing happens when we realize that. It just starts to flow and abundance really naturally starts to come forward instead of being controlled by the ego.
Certainly.
It's just an amazing flip.
Well, it's I think that it also like runs parallel to like the way I like identified it for myself is taking your power back, mm-hmm. Exactly as you said. I did the same thing with this house. I'm like, we're never gonna fill this house. There is so much crap coming out of
I've got it too. Yeah.
I'm like, it's gotta go. But in that time I identified with that, like, oh, I'm on Instagram. I'm like scrolling on Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh, like look at that pencil holder. Like that's incredible. I need that pencil holder, and I'm just using that as an example, but it's constantly like going without like outside of yourself, thinking again that you're not perfect and whole as you are.
Right.
And obviously it's okay to have desires and it's amazing to have whatever that desire is, but really watching where it's coming from. Is it coming from that you're on like Instagram is a good example. You're on there scrolling because you're avoiding like this pain that's over here. That's like, hello, I'm over here. So it really is like one of
it's a distraction. Yeah.
It's a distraction. It's an avoidance, and it's subtle because it's kind of a part of the programming,
I like to say it's like it's right below the level of awareness. It's just kind of like a virus running in the background, like a computer virus, right? It's just kind of there. You don't know it's there, but it's guiding your behavior because it feels comfortable and it feels safe. That's what we do, right? It's an avoidance thing. But yeah, what I'd like to manifest now is a dumpster because I got so much stuff I could just fill it with, right? That's got to be my next thing. And I keep teasing my wife about that. I'm like, we really should get a dumpster. But when we're putting our energy out into the field like that, instead of allowing it to flow through here, that's what happens. Things start to accumulate. And it's awesome to find things and amazing things when we can do it from the right perspective, from the perspective of abundance and not the perspective of lack or filling a hole. That's where the magic starts to unfold. And for me, as I kind of grew into that and started to detach, I started thinking, well, do I really, you realize you don't need that stuff anymore. It's a choice. Do I want it? Well, if I want it, I can have it, really, if I want it,
1000%. And
yeah. And that's okay.
It is.
It's an experience. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's a process, and it's a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, actually a funny story, like with your dumpster, yesterday we were having our sprinkler system fixed, and the guy was like running really, really late. So I had never really met him before. Like he came on like a really great reference. So anyways, I had to have the garage open because he had to have access to the sprinkler system. And so I said to my sister last night when we went to dinner, she's like, "You're just going to leave the garage open?" I'm like, well, the door is locked to the house, but I hope he takes everything in the garage.
I know. It's like, you can have it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's funny, but that's, there's something that when we see all this stuff externally and we're constantly focused on it, it clutters us up internally, and we need to go through that declutter process to create space. Right. And I think what's even more incredible is to let stuff pass through and manifest and then move on. Because that just keeps bringing the flow through, right? So if you want to talk about a car, you get a car that you've wanted, it comes through, and then you let it go. You don't attach to it. You just let it move on, right? We see things in terms of experience, and the universe is perfectly aligned with that kind of thinking, with abundance, because we're here to have these experiences. We are abundant. When we can let go of what's holding us back and separating us from our divine energy, the magic starts to happen. We start to come back together and bring it all in here.
Certainly. Well, and I think, like, to go deeper, it really is your intention behind absolutely anything that you're doing in your life. What is the core intention? Like, are you desperately trying to like get more followers? Are you, it's like really being aware. And one of the things that, like, I like see a lot of stuff in like my third eye. And like one day, like I was shown, like, going back to the car analogy, clearly I like cars, is like, and I drove stick shift. It really is I feel like life is finding that balance between like pushing in the clutch, shifting your gear.
That
like,
sweet spot. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is if you release the clutch too fast, you're shutting that car off, or, like, so it really is like learning and having, and like, and I'm actually like kind of toying with the idea of starting a podcast and like just talking about like what keeps getting repeated to me. And actually after a breathwork detox is when I received it, was the name Ease and Grace. Like I really feel, and at first I was like, I'm such an Aquarius. There's not really a whole lot of ease and grace about me. I'm pretty like out there, but I feel like the reason that that's what's been repeated to me of like that like name is I really feel like that's a part of the medicine, like having ease and grace for ourselves, for those around us. And that's what I said on my story the other day. That was like, everybody's going through some aspect of this ascension period. And like, there's like, and I get like some people don't want to pull their head out of the sand to see that like the world is shifting and changing. And, like it like it's intense and everybody's experiencing it. So if we're all experiencing, like, hold some space for each other, because mine might be coming up as a food thing and yours might be coming up as a luck thing or whatever that could be. But like, that's okay. Like ease and grace. Let's talk about this. Make this the normalization, not the victimhood. Like, let's normalize helping each other get to that next level.
When people can look at us when they're in fear and see an anchor of stable energy and stability, calmness, gracefulness, that goes a long, long way, because again, they're seeing something within them that they're not acknowledging. They're seeing it reflected back.
I do think too, like, obviously if this goes out into the world, like, I think the other aspect is really like I like say this, in my awakening journey, I had a couple of friendships that I felt really safe to actually express all of these things that were coming to me. And I think that that's the other element. Everyone's kind of, not everyone, obviously I'm no longer afraid. Like, as I shared about the gold digger and what have you, like now I'm even more of an open book, but I had a safe space at first that I got to like be there. Like, and mind you, it really was like with practitioners, like, intuitives, Reiki masters, etc. But then
sure.
like, I'm happy to share my journey with anyone. You want to know? Here you go. But
being authentic.
Yeah. But I think that too, like just holding space for everyone as like the more light. And I think that's too, like sometimes I will find that I'll get a little like pushback from, some of my older friendships that I see the world differently. Doesn't mean I'm right or they're wrong, but my light is so bright that then it's like the projection coming in from them at times that I used to take it personal, and that's what would lower my frequency. And then I'd be combative.
Right.
But now I'm like, you know what? No, like I live a very happy life, and like, that's my goal. But, I'm here when you need somebody, but I'm just not going to go to that because I don't have to justify that anymore.
Well, it shows you something within you that comes up. If you feel something that doesn't feel so good, that's opportunity to heal that. And to let it go and be like, I am who I am and I'm good with it. And it's, you just bring gratitude forward for that opportunity to be able to feel something that is running in your subconscious that very situation allowed to come forward.
Certainly.
That's a gift.
Yes. And I say thank you immediately. If something like triggers me, I'm like, oh, thank you. Like
when you could get to that, that is the place to be. That is gold. That is the key. When you could start to see those as opportunities instead of as that victim mentality, then you're well on your way. But I know you do have to get going. We should probably wrap this one up.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Sandra. Bye.